Towards the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Azza wa Jal, He tells some stories, and one of the stories that He tells is the story of Talut, right, and the story of David and Goliath, right? And it's an interesting sort of story because you have the children of Israel, the Bani Israel, and they claim, they say, all right, if you send, they talk to their prophet because they had a prophet among them. They're like, yo, if you send us a king, then we'll fight. We'll go to war. We'll do our duty, right? Because at that time they had, some sort of enemy that they had to stand up to. And the prophet is like, well, what happens if I send you a king and you still refuse to fight? And they say, well, how could that be? How could we possibly do that? We've been turned out of our homes and our children, and all these sorts of things have happened to us. Like, are you doubting us? But then sure enough, when they're sent the king, they criticize. They don't want to go into battle. They say, he's the wrong guy. Wait a second. How are you going to send this king to us? He doesn't have money. He doesn't have this. He doesn't have that. They have their own preconceived idea of who a king should be. And the prophet sends them a king, and now all of a sudden it's off. They don't want to do anything. And this is something that's really, really significant, I think, for most people, because a lot of times we get obsessed with the system versus the personnel, right? We think about the system. If we can fix the system and this thing that's outside of myself, and we can get the perfect setup, then we'll be okay, right? And a lot of times we're really just making excuses for ourselves, right? A lot of times the real work that has to be done is on the inside, right? The people who were in this story of Bani Israel, they were making excuses for themselves. They didn't want to fight. That was basically what it was. Whether they were too cowardly or too attached to the dunya or whatever, they didn't want to fight. But they couldn't admit that, so they had to make an excuse. And they're like, well, we can't fight. We don't have a king. How are we supposed to fight without a king, right? And then the king comes, like, whoa, he's the wrong type of king. We want a different type of king, right? And so they're hiding what's down on the inside, right? Even if you were to be given a perfect system, if you have the wrong people, it'll get ruined. You need to work on the people and what's on the insides of people, their sincerity, their attention to detail, their caution, their taqwa, their righteousness. And then even if you have a system that's not perfect, they'll make it work.